and then you can also fast forward. And that is watch it at faster speed. That is a great way I found to stay focused. If you watch something at 1.5 or 2x, you've got to be focused on it because it'll zip past you. And then anything boring, you can skip over it, right? That's very helpful.
For example, I find talking for 2 straight hours and not taking a break very boring, but that's the lecture, and that's where I have trouble maintaining focus. So what do you do there? Even if it is recorded, and I can watch it Saturday morning, but the problem isn't just the timing; it's just the Zoom and it's the class. What advice do you have?
You're saying the professor's boring.
Yeah, among other things.
That's tricky. I don't know.
Can I offer?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
For me, I really have to be trying to like synthesize what's being talked about, like actively like trying to take notes. And when it gets like really bad, then I have to try to ask a question. And when other people ask a question, I'm like thankful because it breaks it up a little bit. Keeps me more focused, but obviously it doesn't work all the time. Like,
right.
I'm too gone. I'm like, I don't even know what to ask the question about.
So yeah, I appreciate you speaking up, Claire, and that's a good strategy, but it doesn't seem like there's an environment created in which students want to ask questions, because usually students get shut down. I already discussed that. I already talked about that. And that's usually always the answer. I already talked about that, basically saying, not that I talked about it, you didn't understand, you're the problem. And that's been reiterated numerous times. And then people will ask a question, a very direct one, like there was a direct question today, and it wasn't even answered. She basically just said in a roundabout way, you didn't understand better, was to summarize.
Is this a graduate course?
Yes.
Okay. I hear you. This sounds like a big problem. Is it a new professor, a junior professor?
I think they have more tenure than you do.
Wow. Okay. Then this is a problem. I hear you. This is someone who's sort of not putting in the effort, and is go ahead.
Sorry. I just think person, in order to like make you less stressed about it, I heard that the specific professor is doing exactly the same lecture whether it was in Zoom or in person.
Okay.
So I don't think it's a problem of Zoom in this case. It's just a teaching style. I don't know how it can be been.
Well, the best thing is, listen, you can learn from negative examples. And so just make sure that you never do that, and you'll have to just get through this. I'm sorry. I apologize on behalf of the faculty we do have some cases like that, and they're rare, fortunately, but it happens. So I would say the only thing I would do is if there's a way to get that recorded, if someone can help that person record their lectures, and then you can fast forward. That's the best way to get through it.
Okay.
Professor, is there anyone like on campus or in each department to reach out to let them know there is a problem like that, or is it just to prevent it from happening again, or is this just something that we can't do anything about?
Well, it's interesting. You're right. There absolutely is. I mean, you can talk to the department chair, and you can ask, I'd like to keep this anonymous. They will respect that and say, I'm really struggling in this class, and a lot of the other students are as well. The thing is, Michael, I'm guessing a lot of the department chair is well aware of this, and we have certain faculty who have real trouble with teaching. It's surprisingly rare. I mean, it's amazingly rare, fortunately. But when I was department chair, I would say there was one, not even one faculty, but who had problems. But we really pay attention to it. We spend a lot of time trying to fix it when it happens. And we find out usually, by the way, because of student evaluation, as I mentioned earlier. So we know, and the professor knows. And sometimes the only thing is that the professor is, essentially ready to retire and doesn't really care. So that can happen. And yeah, it's unfortunate. So it shouldn't happen. But coming back to Zoom, I think, you know, it is hard. I would say I like Claire's suggestion of asking questions. It's very good because it keeps you awake and it keeps the class a little more lively. You know, I really appreciate when you guys are asking me a lot of questions. I think it makes it so much more interesting and fun to have people jumping in. So you know, and it's mutual benefit, right? You get something out of it too. Okay. So I want to talk more. I think also we didn't get really to talk about Robert Reich's video, but hopefully that was inspiring to you. And if you haven't watched it yet, please do. I want to take a few more minutes, and I'm going to let you go early again today to talk about the chapter 11 on exams. And let's just take a minute and back to it. Screen here. So there were a couple things that I was interested in, and it's on testing, homework, and grading, chapter 11. And it's very interesting because it says that the least favorite activity is grading, right? That jumps out right away. And I would have to say that's probably true. Now, is anyone in here doing grading for their class, or is there a separate reader who's doing the grading? Anybody doing grading? Salim, you're doing grading for your class?
Well, I will probably start grading next week.
Okay, so we could talk about that for a minute. What were you going to say?
I did want to talk about the reading as well, because I felt like there were important notes from the reading that, you know, I thought would be good to discuss.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. There's really a lot of background noise here, but what I wanted to, like, in the way the chapter even starts, where they say that, like, for a lot of students and a lot of teachers, grades are the priority. I feel like that's something I wanted to sort of discuss as a group today, because I feel like a lot of times in courses, you know, you need to make the decision about whether you want to prioritize learning or if you wanted to prioritize getting a good grade. And sometimes sometimes they don't go hand in hand. Like, sometimes you need to focus on getting a good grade and compromise a little on learning, and sometimes the other way around. And I thought that would be a good way to think about from, like, a teacher/instructor perspective.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about that for a minute. So one of the things I find is that, look, there's no doubt everybody that the students you're going to encounter are pretty grade conscious, because face it, they had to be to get to Berkeley. Okay. And you are too. If you just didn't care about grades, you wouldn't be here. Okay. So it does matter. And I always find grade is a very, GPA, for example, is a very important signal in terms of research ability too. And it's because what grades, you know, a good GPA shows me that someone is very careful, that they are responsible in keeping all their requirements or commitments, their responsibilities. They don't let things sort of drop through the cracks. And so students do care about grades. I think that's justified. I think that our job as teachers, is to align the learning and the grades so that they're not at odds, right? So that those two vectors are nicely aligned. And so what that means is really, you know, not putting the grading in a position where you would be, you know, where you're constantly at risk of being docked, of essentially being penalized if you didn't understand something. I mean, I think that's a condition that puts students in a lot of stress and prevents them from learning well, in my mind. Now, I can be, you can push back on that. You might say, and some of you may agree, I've also enjoyed sometimes a professor who's really tough, and the energy that comes from that, right? That they you know their standards are high. You want to really live up to it. So that's good. I'm not saying be slack. But what I'm saying is having a way of letting students know what's important, and so that they can be motivated, incentivized, but not terrorized, right, or intimidated, or overstressed. So, and I think, you know, we're all talking about this in regard to being a GSI, when, you know, it's not always your decision how the course is graded, how those decisions are made. But I can tell you, you probably do have some control over the homework, right? And my philosophy has always been that homework is a learning process, that I want students to make their best effort, but it's not about getting everything right, because it's inherent that you're gonna make mistakes, that there's be things you don't understand. And you're going to learn by doing the homework, and importantly, by seeing the solutions afterward. So, you know, to make the student feel like there's so much riding on them getting it right the first time, I think is totally misguided. And what I want them to do is put in a good effort, and then make sure you spend time understanding the solution. But so then I generally give grades very high for homework. And out of 10, I instruct the readers to give them usually 8, 9, or 10 on any homework that someone did a reasonable job on. And this may be at odds of what your instructor is telling you or others, but I generally am pretty easy about that. And the thing is that, think about it for your students. They are, you know, essentially rewarding effort, and you're not penalizing them for making a mistake on the homework. Does that make sense?
One thing that I discussed on the homework and a little bit on the breakout room, in the breakout room as well, is in one of the courses that I TA'd for in the past, the grading was sort of hybrid between grading on like whether the student got the problem right, but also grading based on effort. So there's like a baseline of, you know, if a student attempted all the problems, and then, you know, they wouldn't like, you know, fail the homework or wouldn't get the credit for it, or wouldn't like, and if homework was in that course, homework was a huge portion of the grade. So it would encourage students to sort of attempt problems. And then you'd see like, maybe in the first few homeworks, the effort wouldn't necessarily equal the accuracy. But then at the end of the course, even the students who on the first few homeworks weren't getting the right answers eventually get to the point where their effort leads to the right answers. I thought that was an interesting observation.
Yeah. Well, one of the things is that the two things. One, if you put that bar super high, what's going to do is students are going to probably, you know, at some point they're going to.
I was just going to say that they're going to like, yeah, that it like encourages people to do dishonest things, or like to like stretch what they should do, because they're so focused on just getting everything right instead of actually like learning.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's fine to make mistakes. You know, that's one of the things it's helpful, because when you see a mistake and you did this the wrong way, right? A lot of times the mistake is because you did it much more complicated way than the right answer, right? And so the students, the penalty of this, they spent all this time trying to do it the hard way, and then they see the answer and it's like, now like, I could have saved myself all this time, right? And that's really valuable. That you learn from that, right? You went through that process. You're going to remember it, that shortcut, the next time, right? That's a really good way to learn. And so, you know, but overly penalizing them because they did it the long way, I don't get it. I mean, it doesn't seem to be valuable. The other thing I want to share with you is I always find that grading, I'm probably a pretty lenient grader. I would say it's because I want students to be excited about the course and the material. And I want them to start feeling that they're good at this, and that they like this topic, that they feel like it's a class they like to come back to because they're doing well, and then they put more time into it and they learn better. So
Professor,
I'm not one of, okay,
question.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to ask, when it comes to tests, I know that your tests haven't, like, I've taken your classes before, and haven't, like, your tests aren't trying to have an average of 60% is what I'm trying to say. And I have taken a lot of other engineering professors that it seems like the professor almost takes pride in the fact that their average on a test is low. What is your philosophy when it comes to that? I've also had teachers that like all of their tests are going to be like an average of 60, but like you talked about, they foster like an environment of like, it's not an environment of like trying to punish students or trying to have low grades, but it's like the understanding of the class as a whole is that it's going to be difficult and that like you're not going to get everything.
No, I know. This also often comes up in faculty discussions about grade inflation, and somebody bangs on the table and there's grade inflation here. We need to get back to the C. It's got to be the average. And I just listen and disagree. I mean, I do not believe that. I
don't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to add on that point because it just hits so close to home that like I had so many courses where like the average was like 50, even 40, and the philosophy of the professors is always like you don't want to hit the ceiling, so then you can keep trying. But like honestly, like the impact of that is just like by the end of the course, you could still score an A by getting like a 60 on the exam, but then you just like leave feeling like you suck at it, and you feel like you don't know whether you actually mastered the material or not, and then you don't know what's being tested at that point, because a lot of times you just go to the test and the approach would be like, well, since solving all the problems is going to be impossible, I'm just going to maximize points. But then at that point it's just like, am I really learning the material?
No, I know. Yeah, I mean, I'm open to other viewpoints on this. If you guys have I'm curious how you feel. If you like, there's some sort of masochism, by the way, to a really tough class like that. I get that too, and I've been in those kind of classes too. And it can work, especially I would say that works, and the professor has to be impeccable. They have to be so good that the material is they're really raising that bar, but they are way above. That works. But if the professor is not,
or like have a legendary reputation, like the class.
Yeah, but Feynman, if you're listening to the Feynman, Feynman taking physics, Feynman could give me a exam. If I got a 20 on it, I'd be happy, okay, and I would feel good. But I think if you're, most professors, you're not that good. And you want people to, I want students to feel good about the material. I want to feel them encouraged and positive, because I really believe that if they feel good, they're actually going to put more time in, learn better, and actually feel that they know how to do this skill that the course is trying to teach them, which is that it gives them a confidence. So then when they go out, they can actually perform that and use those set of tools or methodologies because they like doing them and they actually feel they're good at it. And it will be self-fulfilling. They will be good at it. Anyone want to disagree with that?
I have a question on this. So
yeah.
If somebody's like getting a great score, although they're not like the greatest in this subject, so wouldn't that make them feel that, okay, I have this, I'm good on it, I won't put any more effort on this, although they're not the greatest? Like they don't realize that they're not the greatest, but they're just not pushing forward, like contrary to what you're saying.
Right. So good point, Tatiana. I'm not advocating that, just easy A and everybody just skates through. Okay, that is the other extreme, and you've got to be careful about that. No, but I would say that, Bs are not that hard, and if a student is happy with a B, then they're probably not going to push that hard. It's true. But I find most students are not really satisfied with a B. They feel good that they're getting a B, but now they want to do better, and that pushes them up to putting more time in, and they really do want to get that A. I'm not giving a lot of A pluses out, I'll tell you that. That's very rare. I do give them out though, by the way. I give out usually 5% of A pluses, because I love those students who are like exceptional and really stand out, and I want them to be rewarded. But so there's the scale is important. Right around A minus, A, those distinctions really do matter. So they know there's an upper limit to go, there's something to aspire to, right? But and here's the one thing I want to mention to everyone, and we're gonna finish up in 5 more minutes. Is especially now, one of the things I want to say to you is there is a lot of students who are feeling a lot of stress right now. And it is really important to go easy, give them the benefit of the doubt. I can't tell you how many cases I've had of students sharing with me, you know, really sad stories about their families or their, you know, their circumstance. And so please try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt and accommodate them during this period. It's especially important. And, you know, I think this is going to probably last another semester at least. So, and when you're in this situation and a student wants extra time to finish something, right now it's automatic and there's no penalties. I just don't feel like we can justify putting undue pressure. The only thing is, of course, you want to create an incentive so they don't get too far behind. So that's fair. But really try to be empathetic and supportive of students. That's a very important thing to keep in mind, I would say, because I'm getting a lot of requests for students saying, I missed the last 2 weeks. I'm way behind. Is there any way I can make it up? And my answer is just absolutely. Take the time you need. You're okay. We'll make it work. So please keep that in mind if you're a GSI or you're in a position where people are reporting to you. It's really, this is a very unusual time. Okay, any other points? There's so much that we on this topic, and in that chapter, I just want to very quickly, in 1 minute or so, there's a thing about testing in here about having lots of small tests, small quizzes, which is worth reading. The authors argue that that's actually quite beneficial. Sorry, what? Can I what? Yeah. Oh, at 7? Yeah. All right. Sorry, that was my daughter. All right. And then he talks about, you know, the making up tests and open book and closed tests. That's a whole other subject. Let's postpone that because I think this issue of exams on Zoom is a whole other topic. And we really could go into detail on that. So let's hold that topic for now and think about it. In fact, how about this for next week? Why don't you think about what works and what doesn't there? How do we do that? How do we deal with cheating and avoiding? And let's bring that up as the first topic next time. All right, and the homework for tonight is, what I wanted you to do is to make up a small homework. Your homework is to make up a homework for the course that if you're a GSI or an undergrad engineering course that anyone you'd like, that tests comprehension at varying levels. And then I also want you to do a grading rubric for that. And there's a link here about rubrics. So the rubric is just how you're going to grade that, how it would be graded, okay? So I just want to go through the process of making up your own homework. I don't know if you get a chance to do that in your classes at your GSI, or if you're not GSIing, it's a good process just to go through. How do you make up a homework? And just 5 questions, okay? So don't make it too complicated, but I just wanted you to think through the process of how do you do that, okay? All right, and then we'll come back next week. We'll talk about exams on Zoom. Very interesting topic. And again, I want to just say tonight is going to be a very interesting debate. Starts in 40 minutes, vice presidential debate, and I encourage you to check it out. All right, thanks everybody. See you next week. Bye.
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah.
I guess the follow-on is, with respect to this professor, numerous people private message me and said, yeah, is it this person because this is their MO and it's been like this for years. What does one do about it?
So you're asking me what can you do?
Yeah, or what can be done? Let's start there.
It's hard. Preston, this is a you know, unfortunately, it's one of the prices, the cost of tenure. I mean, what happens is, you know, tenure is there for a very good reason, and we can talk about that. It's a really interesting topic. I think it's about academic freedom and about giving people security so they can explore, you know, unpopular and risky ideas. But it also, there is a case where people feel that they just don't want to put the effort into teaching. The one thing it could also be is maybe that person has got something else going on. Maybe they have a very dire illness that could be very much distracting them. Okay, you never know, or maybe their parent is dying or something. You know what I mean?
For half a decade? Is that?
Well, true.
No,
Is that else?
It could be. I mean, if someone could have cancer, right, that's recurrent and something. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know, but it could be something like that. We don't know the full picture. Or maybe they have a child who's got some severe, issue, right? There could be things that are really taking people away. So I'm just saying, there may be an explanation out there.
Preston, I want to say, in my opinion, because I know you're talking about, in my opinion, I think it might be because of like the amount of content that we have to get through. But that's also my personal opinion. So it's if it's affecting your learning, that's definitely important to figure out. But yeah, I do think it's kind of we have to go through a lot in one semester. And so that's how I've kind of looked at the course and how it's being taught.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mean you're saying that the class is so dense that it's very hard to get through, and that's why is that what you're saying, Mackenzie?
Yeah, I think that the professor has to go quickly and can't really stop for student comments or anything.
I feel like I would want to add a little bit there and push a little bit and say it's not just the teacher doesn't want to stop. It's if a question is asked, it's not very welcome.
Yeah, that's bad. That's bad.
I also wanted to just add that I love giving the benefit of the doubt. I think that that's always the way to go in terms of improving the perception of the course. But honestly, I've been in situations where this didn't happen at Berkeley, this happened elsewhere, but where an instructor is preparing to be pregnant, for example, and just totally doesn't pay attention to teaching a course that is an extremely core class, and it's just and has a known reputation to be notorious and a known reputation to not teach very well, and still the university wouldn't really do anything about it, and nobody really cares, and it's just the state of it's just nothing. So
may I read a private message word for word that I received during this talk today, Professor?
If it's okay to.
Yeah.
Wait, let me turn off the recording.
Quote, took blank a few years ago, and the attitude, you're here